Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about the new movie Strange World. Strange World is directed by Don Hall, who's been involved in a lot of Disney and Pixar movies in the past, including Big Hero 6, Raya and the Last Dragon, and Moana. When I first saw the trailer for this movie, the text and the animation reminded me of Adventures in Odyssey, so that made me want to check this movie out. The synopsis is as follows. The Clades are a legendary family of explorers whose differences threaten to topple their latest and most crucial mission into uncharted and treacherous territory. So without further ado, let's get into the 6 things that make a movie great. 1. The plot. The plot of this movie starts out with Jaeger and his son Searcher going on an adventure to try to save their hometown, named Avalonia, by reaching the other side of the mountains that surround their hometown. During that mission, Jaeger goes missing, but Searcher is able to find a power plant called Pando that he brings back to his town, and they end up using as a major energy source for everything that needs energy in their town. Many years later, the now president of Avalonia lands in Searcher's front yard and tells him, Pando is losing its power, we need to go find the source. What follows is an adventure as they try to find out what is eating away at the source of Pando's power. Explained simply, the plot of this movie sounds pretty decent, especially for a kid's film, but along the way there were a couple moments that pushed the plot along that didn't feel really natural. In the absence of those moments, however, the plot of this movie is pretty decent. There's a couple twists at the end of the movie that keep it interesting, so even though I wasn't super impressed with it, for all intents and purposes, plot gets a thumbs up. 2 is family friendliness. Strange World is rated PG, and pretty much the only reason why on the surface is because of action and violence. There's a decent amount of creature violence that takes place, and I think there's 1 or 2 very mild, crude comments. But other than that, this movie's clean. However, because I review movies objectively, I have to mention something, which is the main point of conflict surrounding this film. Yes, there is a homosexual love interest relationship in this movie, and while it's not central to the plot, it is referenced multiple times throughout the movie, and you see them awkwardly flirting on screen. Again, I'll say the same thing that I said about Lightyear. It has to be your decision whether you want to take your kids to see this movie. However, I disagree with the director's decision to include this in the film, because this is a movie directed towards children. It has nothing to do with the plot, nothing to do with the story, and because of the way they do it, it's just to check a box. And box checking is for adults, which is why I have a problem with its inclusion. Because again, your kids will ask you questions about what they're seeing on screen. Why are these 2 young boys flirting with each other? And if you read into it a bit, there is some subliminal messaging in this film. But in the absence of that, this movie's family friendly. But ultimately, you have to decide whether or not you want to take your kids to see this movie. So for me, family friendliness gets a 50-50. 3 is acting and script. The voice acting in this movie was decent, but there were no standout performances in my opinion. Dennis Quaid played Jaeger, Jake Gyllenhaal played Searcher, and it was nice to hear familiar voices from actors that I really enjoy, but no one's voice performances really stood out to me. The script of this movie was hit or miss. There were a couple gold nuggets here or there, but those moments just seemed like they were surrounded by a bunch of dialogue that was pretty worthless. I remember a time when kids' movies used to have elevated dialogue that challenged the mind of the children to think more critically and use their intelligence, but I have a sneaking suspicion that those days have ended quite a while ago. I found myself laughing and smiling a few times throughout the movie, but that was it. So for me, acting and script get a 50-50. 4 is character development. This movie does make an attempt to address the disconnect between a father and a son. And while I really like that idea, this movie could have done it so much better. To be fair, there is some character development between Jaeger and Searcher, and they have a pretty decent character arc and relationship throughout the film. They just didn't really dive into it as much or address as much as a movie like Onward does, which would have been really nice because those moments tend to do really well. And one of the selling points of this movie is the father-son relationship between Jaeger and Searcher, and the father-son relationship between Searcher and Ethan. And while you get some character development between Jaeger and Searcher, there is none between Searcher and Ethan. In fact, one of the issues I had with this movie is that every time a character would talk to Ethan, it wouldn't be asking about his sense of adventure or who he is as a person or establishing any kind of character depth whatsoever. The only question that they would ask is, so how's your boyfriend? And that's really sad because they could have done a lot with the character of Ethan Ethan, and there could have been that full circle made of the father-son relationship, but instead they just wanted to check a box with this character. And it's a bummer because it doesn't feel like a complete story, and it really shallows out Ethan's character. So while they made an attempt, it just wasn't a very strong one. So for me, character development gets a 50-50. 5 is visuals and CGI. I really liked the use of a lot of unique creatures throughout the film, and when you find out what's going on at the end of the film, it makes all of it even cooler. I did feel like the scene transitions in this movie were really lazy, even in a kid's movie, but I can't be too hard on it. Visually, it was decently appealing, so I have to give visuals and CGI a thumbs up. And 6 is rewatchability. When it comes to kids' movies like these, the market is certainly very saturated. And I find that the question you have to ask yourself when trying to decide what to throw on the TV for your kids, or what to watch for yourself if you're just looking for a lighthearted film is, what is the one thing about this movie that stands out that makes you want to rewatch it? And for Strange World, I can't really answer that question. The runtime of this movie is about 1 hour and 40 minutes, and while it doesn't feel really long, honestly the movie felt kind of bland. It seemed like they had all the right pieces to make a great movie, but they just didn't really deliver. Which is a bummer because I was really looking forward to seeing this movie succeed. I have to give rewatchability a 50-50. With all these areas considered, I have to give Strange World a 4.5 out of 10. This movie had some great visuals and some unique creatures, several funny and clever moments, and took a decent stab at the relationship between a father and a son. But there were no standout acting performances, some of the character development was really weak, and the overall feeling you get at the end of this film is that it was just bland. I don't really know how else to describe it. So if you're a fan of animated Disney and Pixar movies like myself, you may want to check this movie out, but I don't think that you need to in theaters. Thank you so much for watching. If you've seen Strange World, please let me know what you think about it in the comments below. As always, I appreciate your love and support, and I'll catch you guys and gals in the next one.